The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at coolstuffinc.com. The Dice Tower, episode 529.
Best of Essen 2017.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Tom and I are joined by nobody, actually. It's just us. We'll discuss some recent games played, present a tale of mystery, and answer some questions from the mailbag, including a discussion on the etiquette of demoing a game at a convention. Then we'll finish up our Essen recap with our top 10 Essen experiences for this year. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the curry to my Wurst, Tom Vassell.
I'm okay with that.
Oh, good.
Although I like currywurst, I don't like it nearly as much as Eric does. I'm happy with just having any good old sausage. I don't really care about the sauce on it. Mustard is just as fine for me.
Yeah, no, I'll go for I don't get to have currywurst very often, so I think I had it maybe twice when we were in Germany. I didn't have it every meal, which I could have.
I was watching, though. I was saying, I'm going to see if Eric does this too much. Okay, he had it twice. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
No, you know what I think, better than currywurst, though, is that a little bit of that currywurst sauce, maybe, and then those onion rings that you can get at the stand and put them on top. Did you do that?
Onion rings? No.
Yeah, well, they're like those, they're like the fried onion rings, the dry ones, the ones that you put on top of green bean casserole.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I know what you mean now. They put that on a burger. There was just a burger stand in the middle of the hall, and they had they called it the American burger or American sandwich, and it was a hamburger, not a cheeseburger, but a hamburger that had those frizzled onions on it. Pretty good.
Well, what do you know? We just got back from Essen, Spiel, and that's not an exaggeration.
Yes, it's been about 48 hours, if that. Yeah, 48 hours.
And Essen is we're gone a week, but it feels like 2 weeks. It's just a really long time, but it is a lot of fun, and we're excited to be back from it, and we were excited to be there. Thank you to everyone who came by our booth or stopped us in a hall and said hello, because it was about 6 million of you.
It seemed like it. It was a busy, busy fair, for sure.
And then we got back on the 30th, and then the 31st is Halloween, and lots of stuff going on there. What did you dress up, Eric?
I did not dress up, and I had one guy who was handing out candy. I took my kids trick-or-treating, and there was one guy that was like, "Why isn't Dad dressed up?" And I was like, "Because Dad was in Germany like 12 hours ago."
So I dressed up as a ringmaster.
Ah.
And I bought a Plinko thing. Our church had like a little church fair. I made this big Plinko thing, and I wanted to punch the person who wrote the directions to it. But I did manage to get it all together. And so I played Plinko all night. My kids all dressed up like animals. So it was this was not like planned that I was the ringmaster. And then I had a tiger, a giraffe, a lion, a cardinal, Cardinal's long lost daughter.
Nice.
The mouse from Mice and Mystics. They were all animals. What? That wasn't... I don't get it. Whatever. We should have got a group photo.
Yeah.
Well, what do you do? But it was fun and entertaining, and I got to hand out lots of candy.
Cool.
Some of which I have left over for the cruise, because the cruise is only a month away.
Nice. We ran out of candy at like 8 o'clock, and so we just shut down.
It saddens me to hear people who ran out of candy.
We were
tired. Those are people with no imagination and a lack of foresight.
It had been a busy week.
Well, anyhow, we're back. So Dice Tower Cruise is coming up. PAX Unplugged is only a couple weeks away. In fact, this may be the last podcast you hear from us before PAX Unplugged. So let's talk about that. Actually, let's talk about some announcements.
Sure.
All right, so let's start with the closest thing. Cool stuff. And Kendall has its grand opening next Tuesday. Oh, that's today. So if you're listening to this, come on out tonight and join us. But that's exciting. Hopefully some of you will be able to be there. So after that, we have the PAX Unplugged. If Geek and Son is looking for people to demo at their booth, they will give you a free table if you do that. Oh, wait, no. They told me to not say that.
Oh, yeah.
They will give you a free game and a badge coming in, and maybe a gift from them. But that is not a table. They want to clarify that. But we're going to be at the Geek and Son booth, so stop by. Sam, Z, and me, and maybe Eric will do a top 10 there.
Ooh.
Eric, we didn't discuss having you in on this top 10.
No, this is the first I've heard of it. If you do want to bring me on, tell me what the topic is before we get there, shall
You
we?
will have 10 minutes like you always do.
Great. Excellent.
We will have worked on our top 10 list for months, and Eric has 10 minutes.
Thanks.
I have to say, I'm more nervous about this particular top 10 than any we've ever done. Because this is an audience that's different, right? I feel like we have to impress them. They're young. They're going to look at us old guys and be like, what are they doing up there? And we're going to be like,
Just start throwing out buzzwords. Twitch, 1UP, LAN server.
You're an old man, dude.
I know.
All right. So that's coming up, and then the cruise is coming up. There's just all sorts of things that are going on. So the Jack Vassal Memorial Fund auction is still going on. I think it's a week away from finishing.
Yeah, I got something up there.
What'd you put up?
I offered to read the rule book to your favorite game. So if you want me to read the rules so you can learn them in the car or play them for your friends, I will narrate your rule book if you win the auction.
What if I win this auction?
Well, then what would you have me read?
I would have you read Star Trek Fleet Battles.
I did say there was a limit of 1 hour.
Oh, never mind then.
Yeah.
Is it Starfleet Battles? Remember that old game that has like 200-page rule book?
Right, yeah. Like, I don't want somebody handing me ASL, the rule book.
Why would anyone want to hear that anyway? That's just someone being a jerk. Someone a sadist, you know?
Rule 18.1.2. If a soldier enters a hex, all that. You don't want that.
Eric's really hoping it's something like just a one-page rules.
I'm hoping it's something that has some great flavor text that I can really get into and play
It
up.
should be one of the CGE rule books. Those are always fun.
That would be fun. I have to do like different imp voices and stuff. And
I have a box of goodies that you'll get. Guaranteed good games, guaranteed bad games. In fact, I already have some of the games set aside to go into this box. So that's exciting. Okay, but, man, I really feel like there's an announcement I should be making that I'm not.
Uh-oh.
And
well, maybe future
Tom's
Tom's going to jump in and once you figure that out.
Future Tom is too lazy to do that. So current Tom's going to try to think about this. So he's going to tell Eric to talk about a game that I will listen to intently.
Great.
While I think about this.
Okay. I'm going to start with a game I got to play at ConCon a few weeks ago here in my home state of Connecticut. I got to play Wasteland Express Delivery Service. This is from Pandasaurus Games, and I had been hoping to play this for some time, and I had sort of circled around it, hadn't had a chance to actually get it to the table, and got to play a copy here at the convention. In Wasteland Express, you are you're trying to pick up and deliver things. You're in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, though. This is sort of a Mad Maxy style of location, and you will earn money and prestige for delivering things around the world, and as well as battling both your opponents and for raiding outposts and that sort of thing. Ultimately, though, it's not about money, it's about your prestige. You have to earn 3 prestige points in order to win the game. You can win these through some global contracts, earning a lot of money, delivering like a nuclear weapon from one end of the board to the other, stuff like that, as well as some personal missions that you may have drawn from a deck that have like a special symbol on them. They aren't going to earn you much money, but they might earn you one of these victory point prestige points. So the main mechanism is that each round of the game, you have a certain number of activations, a certain number of actions, eight big actions. But you can only do each thing a couple of times. So you can only make 1 or 2 deliveries. You can only make 1 purchase on a turn. So you have to make these actions count. You're driving your crazy post-apocalyptic vehicle around this variable map and buying things in one place, trying to deliver them somewhere else. You can also make multiple purchases if you buy them all at one place. So you have to be very efficient about buying stuff. And the prices for these goods fluctuate pretty dramatically. Even what is available in different areas of the board fluctuates. What people want fluctuates all over the board. And you also can raid bad guys, which involves buying equipment for your vehicles, like machine guns and targeting devices and nuclear storage compartments. So there's this whole game of souping up your vehicle most efficiently. But also, as you take damage throughout the course of the game, you'll be fighting these outposts and raiders. And if you lose, you're going to take damage. That knocks out some of your cargo space on your ship. Not your ship. It's not a ship. Sorry, this isn't in space. This is a vehicle. On your truck. And whoever finishes their 3 prestige points first wins. I knew this one might be a little bit on the edge for me. I've heard this compared to Merchants and Marauders favorably. This has a lot of luck as you face off against these raiders and outposts, because you'll draw a card and it might be super strong and it might be fairly easy to defeat, and you're rolling dice when you're in these matchups and adding whatever modifiers you have on your truck. And sometimes it's just impossible to defeat whatever it is you're up against, and oh, sorry, you're just going to take damage. That's just the way it's going to be. I enjoyed the puzzle of this game, but I also felt very constrained. I mentioned that you can only do certain actions a few times in the course of a round. And then you have to, until you've reset your actions, begun a new round, you can't say purchase again. And I'm used to having a little bit more free form, a little bit more free reign in a pick up and deliver game, being able to find the efficient routes and utilize them a lot. Another aspect that's limiting is when you make a delivery somewhere, the story is that you always cheat people when you make these deliveries. And so they don't like you anymore. And until you've traded somewhere else, you can't then deliver to that original location again. So that's another limiting factor. I'm used to being able to exploit the cool routes. And maybe I was a little grumpy at this restriction. It's a little more difficult to jump through these hoops. But I don't know if I enjoyed that aspect of the puzzle as much. So while I found the exercise challenging, I don't know how much I enjoyed it, which is where I sit with Wasteland right now. I'd like to try it again, but it's not one that I immediately am running out to purchase or running out to play. If presented with it, I'd love to give it another shot, and I will try to be more efficient and to better plan my actions. But for now, I think I'd prefer something that has a little bit more freedom in what I'm allowed to do. That's Wasteland Express Delivery Service.
I'm very interested in this one. I haven't played it yet, but I really want to. And I'm not going to let your sadness detract me, because I think it's going to be amazing.
It is. I think you'd probably like it more than some of the other pick-up and deliver games that I would be more interested in. It's got more story, more theme, more fluctuation, and it's fun to drive around these giant trucks.
So you're not saying this is deplacing Merchants yet?
This is maybe Merchants and Marauders. I think I would play this over Marauders, because Marauders, you can get your ship sunk and just totally decimated, and you have to basically start over. This one, if you get some bad luck, it's more of a delay than it is an utter decimation of your vehicle. So I like that better.
All right. Let's get to my first game. I should mention here at this point, folks, that you may have noticed that there's only Eric and me on this show.
Oh, yeah, we totally forgot to mention that.
That's because we're just doing this between Essen, and also it's possible someone didn't schedule properly.
It's possible that someone forgot to, it's easy to forget when you're getting ready for a trip that, there's stuff to do after the trip, and then there isn't the time to get ready for it.
I really need a scheduler. So be prepared now, folks. That may be in the cards for someone to become a gopher, administrative assistant.
Actually, what we should have said is, well, we missed the old 1-2 banter, and so we decided to do that on purpose, and it wasn't a scheduling thing at all. So we just...
We'll have our third guest back, but we're not sure when at this point.
Yeah, it's sort of a busy time of the year with all the conventions and stuff, so it was just easier to do a two-person podcast.
So my first game is Richard the Lionheart. And I realized as I was playing this game that my whole life have said Richard the Lionhearted, but that's apparently incorrect. Because people keep correcting me as I say it.
Okay.
In this game, if you're playing with an even number of players, half the people are Robin Hood and his friends, like Little John, Maid Marian, etc. The other half are evil people like Prince John and the Sheriff of Nottingham, and so on and so forth. And if you're playing with an odd number of players, one person's like some sort of neutral character. So in this game, it's a worker movement game. That seems to be the trend these days, it feels like. And you are moving your dude around the board into different spaces. And you're collecting cards of different types. There's 6 different cards. 3 are for your side and 3 are for the opponent's side, but you're collecting them. So these different spots will have you get money. They'll let you get different cards, turn cards in for points, turn cards in for different cards, etc., etc. So you go to a spot and you will do whatever that spot says. So you're going to pick, you can only travel a certain distance, which lets you get to most spots on the board. But that's pretty much all you can do in your turn. You move and you take the action. And after everyone has done this, everyone then has to put a certain amount of cards into a communal pile. This communal pile is initially seeded with 1 card of all 6 types, but you will add more cards to it. You have to add cards to it or you lose points. So as you add these cards to the pile, after you do that, you'll shuffle the cards and then reveal a certain number of cards. And the cards that will come up will move different tracks. The game is about Richard the Lionheart. He is off fighting on the crusade, and some of the characters, the bad guys, don't want him to come home, and Robin Hood and his friends want him to come home. So one of the tracks is him coming back. There's another track of him fighting the Saracens. And then there's another track about depleting the treasury, And so there's these different tracks, and if your cards come up, you will move on the different tracks. And if you get one of the tracks all the way to the end, your side wins. And so but your side doesn't win. Your side wins, and then whoever has the most victory points on that side is the actual real winner. So it's semi-team. So if I'm Prince John and I'm working with the sheriff, I want our side to win, but I would prefer me to beat the sheriff. So I want more points than he does. But the more points I'm taking, I'm probably not helping our side win. Now this causes a small thematic disconnect. Because I can see Prince John and the sheriff doing this. Totally makes sense. They're working together, but anything, they'll stab each other in the back. I'm not sure I can see Robin Hood and Little John doing that. They seem to be more of a single team. Just a straightforward team. But whatever. It works for the game. And the neutral player is trying to make sure that neither side wins and gets points if they end with neither side winning. Things like that. They have their different little victory conditions. The game is fine. It has that old, medieval with an E at the end artwork. I don't really care for that artwork personally. I think people back then couldn't draw very well. No, I'm serious. They couldn't. Look, I'm not saying I can draw well at all, but the people back then, we look at those pictures and I'm like, bleh. I don't know why we want that artwork in the game. We want it to feel authentic, I guess, but whatever. The game is good. It's not great. It's okay. Moving around, trying to find these cards, putting cards into this pile and hoping your cards come up. Of course, if your cards don't come up, they'll come up in the next round because they stay in this pile and keep getting shuffled around. Sometimes you're messing around with cards so much that your hand is full of cards of the other person's side, so you're forced to put cards of their side into the pile, which doesn't help things at all. It's a very intriguing game. It's an interesting idea. I played it earlier this year in prototype form at CMON-Con. Now playing the final thing. I like it. Not fantastic, but an interesting game with a pretty interesting theme. Richard the Lionheart.
My next game is a dexterity game from Matago called Meeple Circus. Exactly.
Keep going.
In fact, there is an app that goes with this that basically plays what Tom is singing, various music tracks that go along with this game. You start out each round. There's 2 practice rounds and then a final performance round. The first 2 practice rounds are played simultaneously, and there are some cards on the table that are sort of bonus task cards. You might get points for having 2 meeples on the ground or 2 meeples standing on the same level and then a plank balanced between them. That may be worth 3 points. If you can manage to make that happen, you'll get those points. Or 2 meeples lying down with a ball sandwiched between them, or somebody standing on the back of a horse or an elephant and something balanced on top. There's a whole group of these different decks with different possibilities of stunts you can perform. You then go through a drafting round where you acquire the pieces required to do some of these tricks. You go around the table, get these collections, you pick tiles and get the pieces you need, and then you begin a 2-minute timer with that music playing and the crowds cheering and oohing and ahhing and stuff, and everyone's trying to arrange their pieces in their little ring of the circus to earn points. And then you evaluate. You also have different colored meeples. The blue meeples are strong men and want to stand on the bottom and lift things, so you get points for having them on the lower level. And then acrobats can't touch their feet on the ground. And then these red aerialist meeples want to be as high as possible. You actually have a little ruler that you measure them. You go through 2 rounds of basically this. You start bringing out specialty meeples that have special rules that earn extra points. And then in the final round, instead of playing simultaneously, you have one player goes at a time and everybody else watches them like hawks. And the drafting round for that includes some sort of special rule for the performance. So you may have to exclaim every time somebody claps. I had to, every time the applause happened, I had to stand up out of my seat, take a bow and say, thank you, thank you. Somebody else had to, anytime they dropped a meeple in the presentation, had to say, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, before they could continue with their assembly. It is a lot more nerve-wracking to do this dexterity element, this performance element, when everyone is watching you during those 2 minutes. It really feels like a performance. It's a pretty simple game. Everybody just sort of layers on these extra rules for earning points. It all comes together very, very well. The soundtrack is cool. The extra rules in that final performance are cool. That tension at the end is neat. As you go in sort of reverse scoring order, the underdog gets to go first, and then the leader has to see if they can maintain the lead in that final performance. I liked this game. I played this very close to the end of the Essen Fair. The game had been sold out already, but I will certainly be on the lookout for this when it hits distribution, and am hoping to hopefully give it as gifts. I think this would work well as a Christmas gift for a few people on my list. So I was very happy with Meeple Circus from Madigo.
This is definitely one of the best dexterity games I've played in a long time. The theme is really strong. It's silly fun, but it actually has some good cerebral thinking, too. Like, what's the best way to maximize my points?
Yeah. You have to acquire the pieces you need in order to get as many of these arrangements as possible.
Okay, next I want to talk about Indian Summer. This is the middle game of a trilogy of games that Uwe Rosenberg is doing about tile laying. And by trilogy of games, he's not including Feast for Odin or Patchwork. This is his thing. The first one was Cottage Garden. This one looks just like Cottage Garden in the box terms. But this one is The Leaves of an Autumn on a Forest. It's beautiful. And in this game, you are placing tiles onto a grid in front of you, and the first person to completely cover it with tiles wins. That's it. It's really simple. And what you're going to do on your turn is you're going to place a piece on your board, but each of these pieces has holes in them. And if you cover a treasure with a hole, there's a chance you'll get that treasure, and these treasures you'll be able to turn in to do different things. You can get caught up in getting these treasures, which can make you lose the game if you're not careful. I say that from watching other people do it. I really like a lot of what this game does. It's very simple in many regards. Put these down, but there's different ways to put the tiles there. When's the best time to use your treasures? If you get a bunch of the holes next to each other, you could put another animal token on top of them, which would give you even more treasures. And when you do that, it feels amazing. And then you realize that you were so caught up in doing that amazing thing that someone else is beating you and putting tiles out. Really cool little game. I really enjoyed it, and it just looks gorgeous. I mean, I don't have autumn here in Florida. We have spring and summer. But And I'm not a big fan of autumn because it always makes me sad because it's the winter. That means winter is coming. But I like this specific. I like the look of an autumn forest and the floor covered with leaves of the forest. That's really neat. And this game does a good job showing that. There's still life left in this tile laying game. I have to think for a while before I determine where I would put this one. I think I would put it above Cottage Garden, below Barren Park, above Patchwork. Feast for Odin's a whole different ball game, so we won't mess with that. But that's where I think it would be right now.
Okay.
Oh, that was Indian Summer.
Yes. You know, Tom, I've been, I think, altogether too positive over the last few weeks. I think it's time to go a little dark. It's time to talk about Pyramid of the Sun. This is a small box card game from Strawberry Studio. And you are building a pyramid. You start out with one long row of cards at the bottom at level 0 of this pyramid, and you are building all the way to the top with getting smaller and smaller rows as you work your way up there. There are 2 types of cards that you will be drafting. You start with the basic blocks that have numbers, I think, ranging from 1 to 5, 6 maybe, that are worth points that don't have the sloped edges that you need for the edges of the pyramid. There's also a second draw deck that include those edge pieces as well as pieces that would fit at the very top of the pyramid. These also have numerical values, and as you place them on the pyramid, you'll get either the number that's on the card or the level that it's at in the pyramid, whichever one is lower. There's also some bonus symbols that can get you either more points or more draws from the draw deck if you play them next to the same symbol. On your turn, you're either going to draw cards, you have a hand limit of 5, but other than that, you can draw and then discard down, or play as many cards as you want into the pyramid, and then score points for them. And so you're sort of doing this hold back, then spew cards onto the pyramid, hoping to score as efficiently as possible, and then charge up again, blah, and then, spew cards out. The game ends very quickly because of this nature of being able to play as many cards as possible. You sort of are everyone's jockeying for position, and then all of a sudden, blah, 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 and it's over. You also score double points for the sides, the sloped pieces, and triple if you manage to play the final card, which means that whoever plays last is probably going to score a whole lot of points. So that in itself does not leave a great taste in my mouth for this game. What really drives me nuts is the graphic design of this whole thing. I don't know what they were thinking. The score track of this game is made up of 2 cards that go together and make sort of a curved scoring track that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 along the top. Actually, it's 1 to 7, and then it curves down below that to 8 and 9. 2 spaces on a second row, and then you pick up another card that says 10 and start that track over again. And then you flip the 10 over to a 20, and then you do the track over again, and then you get a 30 card. And that's how the score track works, except they misprinted the score track, and you can't even read the 10 on the 10 card, or the 40 on the 40 card, or the 70 on the 70 card. They all just mesh together, and you can't even tell what card's in front of anybody and why'd they go with that little track in the first place, and it doesn't make any sense.
Sounding good so far.
And the numbers on the pyramid cards are also just in a weird script and fade into the background, and the whole thing's just a mess. It's a big mess, and it made me angry. So I can't recommend the gameplay. Maybe you would enjoy that with small kids. But the way the whole thing was put together is infuriating and doesn't make any sense at all. So I can't. No. Pyramid of the Sun. Blech.
I haven't played this, so I don't know. Sam didn't seem to hate it as much as you. Well, we'll see. I'll determine if Eric. I don't know. It looked really cool on the table.
The cover art is quite charming.
That was your one positive comment.
Yes, it was. Yes, I always feel like it's good to be positive.
Well, Space Freaks. This is from Stronghold Games. And Space Freaks, in this game, you're in some sort of arena, and you have these mutated alien beast things, and they're fighting each other. Each player at the beginning of the game forms their fighter. So you pick it. You're given a head randomly. That head has some sort of special ability, And then you're going to pick your two limbs, your torso and your legs. And they're going to give you a certain number of hit points, a certain attack that you can do, bonuses to that attack. And so you set this up, and then you have your kind of a unique individual. Although they're really not that unique. There's just minor differences between the different characters. So after you do this, you have 3 of these dudes that are going to be running around this arena, shooting and hacking at each other. So on your turn, you run around, you hit other people, you're doing damage to them, they're hitting back. It's all deterministic, so you're not really rolling dice, but you have special cards that can change things. You can set up turrets and have alien and robots running around. Aliens will show up and go around and attack people. And you run up, you shoot them, you blow them up, they respawn, they come back. And so this just continues over and over till you accomplish a certain number of missions. A mission might say, be 1 space away from the person to your left. Kill someone else in their home base. Whatever. The game is really silly fun. I like it. I don't think it's great. I think it almost takes itself more seriously than it should for how light it is. It reminds me of Frag from Steve Jackson back in the day. I wish that the building of the aliens felt more significant. It's kind of like, do you want an extra movement or do you want an extra damage? And it's like, I guess I'll pick the extra movement. And there's a couple rules we had to look up occasionally, like just some minor things, and it felt just a little too complex for how light it is. I mean, it's a really, really light game. You are literally running around shooting each other. The missions drive it forward. You don't just sit around and play defensively. You got to go up and attack people all the time. And you just shoot basically the most wounded character or whatever you need to accomplish your goal. So it's silly fun. I think some people will like it. The cover is kind of unique and interesting. I'm not sure that offers anything new to the genre. The whole build an alien thing, I was like, ooh, that sounds fun. But you did it once at the very beginning of the game, and it doesn't seem to matter that much. But overall, it's enjoyable. That is Space Freaks, which is from Stronghold Games, and I believe doubles as an autobiography by Bonnecore.
Really? That was a bit of a stretch, Tom.
It really was. Sorry, I came up with it on the spot.
Yeah.
Let's hear a tale.
And now, a tale of mystery. I recently received a copy of Sushi Go Party for my birthday. My wife, my 5-year-old son, and I had already played Sushi Go many times, and in particular, my son and I were excited to try out the new options available in the party version. After playing a few 2-player-only games, my wife was ready to join us, and we eagerly began the setup process. When we did this, my 2-year-old daughter took an interest and began playing with the scoring markers. I didn't think much of it and proceeded to explain the rules of our particular menu to my wife. I didn't notice my daughter had left the room until the game was ready to begin, and we only had 2 scoring markers on the board. And the extra ones in the box were also gone. Proceeding to the other room, I found my daughter happily playing with some Play-Doh. But there were no scoring markers to be found. I went into the kids' playroom and saw the usual mess, but again, no scoring markers. We had recently adopted 2 kittens, and my daughter had taken to playing with them and also playing with their food, water, and litter box. The good news is that this is not a tale of horror, and so the pieces were not recovered from the litter. The bad news is they were still not found. Dismayed, I returned to the game and stated we could not play. Yes, I realize I could have used anything as a score marker, but the loss of the scoring markers was quick to bum me out. I took a shower and came back, beginning to search more methodically. I removed couch cushions. I cleaned up almost the entire playroom. Still nothing. I even gave her the other 2 pieces and tried to cajole her into retracing her steps. That obviously was a fruitless effort. The next day I returned to work and joked with a colleague about how a new game could now only be played as a 2-player version. Later I received a text message from my wife. Found 5 of the pieces. I immediately called and asked where they were. She said she didn't know, and that at some point our son pointed out that our daughter had them on a chair with her, as if they had just appeared. When I got home that night, I did another exhaustive search. where was the missing piece? The next day, the scene repeated itself, and the missing piece was returned. But again, its hiding spot was never to be revealed. As happy as I am to have all of the pieces back, and now have the ability to play with the full complement of 8 players, I'll always wonder where she had hidden them. And will be sure to keep a closer eye on her whenever a game is being set up.
Well, that's great, because that never happens to me. The piece disappears, and I never find it until later on when I lose my keys, and I'm looking for my keys. Then I will find the piece. But I still won't find my keys until I'm looking for my cell phone. Then I find the keys.
Right, but where's your cell phone?
Well, then I lose the piece again.
Yeah. Then you set it down to pick up your phone, and the next thing you know...
No, the cell phone is not a problem. I can ping the cell phone. You know... that's the great thing about the Apple Watch is I can ping my phone, and it will ping unless the batteries run out, and I hardly ever let that happen.
Right. So the solution here is that you put an RFID chip on every game component.
Those chips don't work very well for me anyway. My kids bought me some for things, and I put them on like my keys and stuff. Meh.
Meh.
Meh. Folks, critical. Listen, we have 0 tales.
What?
I need tales of horror, tales of amazement, tales of mystery, tales of treachery.
No.
Send us tales, or we'll have to cancel the segment.
Oh, no. The vault of tales is empty.
It is. Now, realize we have obviously gotten more tales than this, but we have not read them all, because a lot of them were just, I played a game with a really slow player.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So, but we've run out of tales that I wanted to put on the show, so we need more. Also, we need more questions, and we're running out of everything. But speaking of questions, let's get to that segment.
Tom.
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 Hi, Tom.
Have you ever accidentally eaten one of your game pieces?
Do you ever make a fort out of game boxes?
How big can a miniature be before it's not really a miniature? And now, the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe, answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the game library?
Our first question comes from Sharia. And when I said question, she asked a lot.
Yeah, it looks like 2 sets. She started numbering and then numbered again.
Well, here's the deal. I really feel like this is a good discussion topic to some degree.
Okay.
So she was asking about demoing games. And so since we just got back from a convention, this kind of makes sense there. So she says, is there an etiquette to demoing a game at a convention? And she has some questions on that. So I'll speed through these and we'll talk about each one. So
Okay.
What's the appropriate length of time to demo a game? So if a complete game takes 45 minutes to an hour, should you be considerate and conclude the demo when you get the gist and feel of the game to give others a chance to demo it too? So she's talking about from the perspective of the person demoing the game.
Right. Well, this often isn't the choice of the demoer. This is more of a choice of the publisher that has set up the demos. But I think I am totally in favor of the shorter, truncated version of the game when you are learning it at a convention. I guess if you're dealing with like a 45-minute game, it's probably okay to play the whole thing. But I'd rather that they run through maybe a 20-minute version so that they can cycle more people through and actually get to try the game.
Yeah, I agree on that too. But I mean, remember, Essen's very different than other conventions. They will demo the whole game, while most conventions are just demoing a small chunk of the game.
Yeah. I may be skipping ahead here, but I ran into one of the folks from CGE, and he was telling me that they just this year adopted a new demo strategy for most of their games, in which, 1, they're doing truncated versions of the games, and 2, they don't explain the whole thing up front. They did the play-as-you-go sort of learning. They say, this is a demo. You don't worry about winning. We're learning how to play the game here. They're playing through the ages. You know how complicated that game can be. They don't explain it first. They say, all right, you're running a civilization. Choose one of these 5 cards. What do? It doesn't matter. Just pick one. You might want to choose a green or a purple one. Okay, I took this. All right, that's a wonder. Here's how wonders work.
Interesting. They actually follow this philosophy. I've been playing the Through the Ages app, and they are following this philosophy in that app's tutorial.
Interesting.
Okay, so then our second question is it rude to get out in the middle of a demoed game, especially if you're playing with strangers? Obviously, if you're all a group, you can be like, all right, we're done with this. This is a tougher call. I've never seen anyone get that upset. Again, though, it's at an American convention. Someone's like, I got to get going. This isn't my kind of game. And the person demoing it is kind of glad because if you're not interested, get out. Let the next person get in.
Yeah.
I don't mean that to be rude, but I mean, I don't think anyone's upset by this. It's a demo, not an actual game.
Right. I mean, I guess I prefer if you're upset with the demo and you say, I gotta go, it's fine. It's a demo. I have been in a couple of situations at a convention where I've sat down, I say, I have to be somewhere in 45 minutes. So if I have to leave early, I apologize. But that's a different thing. That's not me not liking the demo. That's simply having a time constraint.
Oh, I just say I have to be somewhere in 2 minutes. It works better, Eric. Don't get this 45-minute stuff.
Well, I mean, if I'm sitting down for a demo, though, usually the expectations are going to play a few rounds of the game. You just want the quick explanation.
I really do. She then says if there is 2 or 3 or 4 of you, should you be considerate and take 1 or 2 spots only? The non-playing member of your group can be a shadow player playing in tandem with one of you. I'm thinking this might be a good compromise because they'd still learn the rules this way and follow the gameplay, even if they're not playing directly. To this I say, nay. If there's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of you, take all the seats you want.
Yeah.
You all paid to go to the convention.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get that you're trying to be nice to the publisher and have various people from groups maybe play it, but you can all play. I don't see a point that you need to shadow play.
No, take the spots. Sit down. I mean, I guess it is a little bit of an issue if you got like a single player that's been hovering and your group of 4 has been hovering and it's a 4-player game. It sort of stinks to, grab all 4 spots and push the one single player out. It really depends on how busy that particular demo table is. If you know someone was there before you, for sure, you should let them sit down first, and then you have to do something with that 4th player. But if you were there, if you're first in line, your group is first in line, sit down and take the slots. See how the game would play with all of you.
This is very Essen-oriented, I think. Like the next question says, how do you wait in line next to the table you're hoping to demo next? Or first come, first serve? This only happens at Essen. Usually when I'm at other conventions and they have a game to demo, they're like, hey, do you want to play? And you're like, I'm not sure. They're like, sit down and play. It feels like that as opposed to at Essen, people are like, did you leave that seat? Boom, it's mine.
Yeah, this happens at Gen Con too. For the really popular games, you get people hovering. What is the etiquette? I think officially it's if you're hovering around a table, you are waiting for that table to finish. But I do think it's also worthwhile to ask the demoer, the person teaching the game, which table looks like they're going to finish first, so you know which one to hover over. Because it can be a little annoying if you're waiting for one that ends up being the slow table, and then another table finishes much faster, but other people have been waiting next to that table. It might be worth asking the demoer to let them know that you're next in line, and they may have a good coordination method for knowing that you're next.
Yeah, really, that would be my number one thing. Find the people. There's people floating around the booths and say, oh, is there a chance one of these tables will open up? And just get in line in their mind. So this is what she and her husband decided to do. First of all, if there's an empty spot, they take it. One of them's a shadow player. If there's 2 spots, they both play. But they always ask if they can join politely, which makes sense.
Yeah, and usually, almost always, if there's an empty slot, especially the demoer will want to fill as many seats as possible.
They then say if everything's full, they ask the people who are explaining the rules if they know when any games are going to be finishing up soon, see how long they're going to wait.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Then they said if it's a while before the game is done, they ask if they can have the rules explained to them while other people are playing. Good choice. Then they even ask if they can read the rule book. That's a little tougher, but you can do that.
Right, because the players who are actually playing may need to reference it.
And then they watch the other people playing the game because that can tell them whether they'll like the game or not.
Yeah.
They then ask if people can take a picture of their woolly mammoth with the game board. That's just more silly. But here's the thing, this is interesting to me because when I first read this question, I was like, oh, what should demoers do? I have a list. But this is actually what people who are demoing the game do, which is a very different thing. The fact is, just be polite. I honestly think when you're demoing a game, if you hate it, trying to beg out early is a good thing because why should you play a game that's miserable and take spots from people who might actually like it?
Right. Yeah, I did hear, let's see, I heard an anecdote of someone who was having such a terrible demoing experience. The demoer, the teacher, was just not very good, was a little rude and pushy, and they actually left. They said, you know what, I'm sorry, we have to go, because it just wasn't a pleasant experience for them. And it's a shame because they liked the game. I think they had either played it or looked at it elsewhere, but the demoing experience was so unpleasant that they just weren't going to stick around for the full game.
Yeah, you really got to get good demoers. Well, let's go to Aaron's question.
Aaron listens to the podcast regularly, wants to send in a couple of questions for us to authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe discuss. When given the option in a game between an earlier turn order or a supplementary benefit like extra in-game currency, additional resources, etc., as compensation for a later turn order position, do you have a preference of one over the other, or do you usually believe it's pretty well balanced so it doesn't really matter? Also, are there any games in which you especially like the type of turn order compensation system that it offers? Aaron usually likes the extra resources or benefits and taking the hit on turn order, and especially likes the unique turn order system that the Tuscany expansion of Viticulture offers.
This is actually a really good question. This happens in games a lot. I'm like, you're starting last, so you get more resources, but I'm starting first, so I'm going to take the best spot on the board. I think I personally prefer the extra resources, usually.
I think I agree, especially early in the game, when maybe turn order doesn't matter quite as much, when there's not a whole lot of competition. Yeah, somebody might get the best space on the board, but there are still good places to go. So I would rather get the boost in resources or the less expensive prices, something that lets me save up my stuff. And then later in the game, when I know I really need the turn order, then I'm willing to take the hit on resources and go for that first place in the turn. But early in the game, I'd rather have stuff than position.
Although once you learn the game, sometimes I really want to go first.
True. Yeah, but then knowing you're going to take that hit, I do like this as a mechanism. It gives some, like you said, compensation, sort of a catch-up for the one who isn't going first. If you're going last, it's kind of nice to have all those resources to play with that you can spend to overcome that deficiency. It's designed to sort of even out, but I like having the stuff.
I like it so much that actually I get upset when it's not there. Someone's like, you're going third. I'm like, okay, cool. What do I get? Nothing. You get the same thing as everybody else.
You're going third. Yeah.
I'm like, are we sure this game's balanced?
Yeah.
I always feel that way. Like, but the ones that always get me, and this bugs me, and someone needs to explain to me why this is legitimate. When they give the second and third player the exact same resources. Have you seen games like this where first and second player get a coin, third and fourth get 2 coins? And I'm like, okay, fine, but second player still goes second.
Yes.
I've definitely played games that do this.
I bet because the math starts getting into decimals. Like they decided that getting second over third is worth half of a coin, and they can't give you half of a coin to start, so they just round it up or down. It didn't work. They probably tried it at one for the first player, 2 for the second player, 3 for the third player, 4 for the fourth player, and it was too much of an advantage in cash for the third or fourth player. So they had to sort of compress it back down again.
I am not sold on this.
Well, I know you don't like it, but that's probably the math they had to deal with.
They said, are there any games, Aaron asked also, are there any games which we especially like this turn order compensation system? There is one I just played recently. Oh, Clans of Caledonia, where you got cards and you picked which these cards had starting resources on them. So whoever was last picked their card with their starting resources first and went around. I really like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do like the ones that, if you're going last, you get first choice of some sort of special power. Alien Frontiers did that. Not only did they give resources going down the line, but also the faction boards go to the last player first, and then whoever's going first gets maybe one or two choices, and that's it.
Well, I guess that's that. That's its questions.
That is that.
Let's move on to the top 10.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
All right, so Eric and I just went to the Essen fair, the biggest, or one of the biggest game fairs in the world, and a ton of board games and things. We had a great time there. So we thought instead of going over it in detail, we just do a top 10 list of it. So
Sure.
Things that we liked or found notable about the Essen fair.
Yeah, not necessarily games, but just general impressions and interesting tidbits.
Yeah, this is kind of just, I don't know. It's just something I thought might be interesting. There's very few games. We don't play many games at the fair. I think I have a couple games on my list. I do.
Yeah, I mean, I actually got to play, I think, more than usual this time. We were able to set up the booth a little earlier this year. And so we actually got to sit down and play some stuff on Tuesday and Wednesday before the fair opened, in addition to getting to play some demo stuff, throughout the days of the fair itself.
It's true. We just sat down and played games. That was super weird.
It was strange to be ready. I mean, we had our booth set up, we had our table set up, we had our promos ready to go. We were ready, and so we actually got to play stuff.
All right, well, let's get started and see what happens.
Number 10.
So number 10, I have in the number 10 spot because it's not as much of a positive as we'd like. This year, it was the common thread amongst many of the publishers that we ran into is that the German customs system was a little more stringent than they had been in the past. These were rules that had always existed regarding labeling, but they were being enforced more stringently this year. And either shipments were caught up in customs because they didn't have labels for German distributors and for German safety information, or people were furiously stickering all of the boxes that they had in their booth with this information so that they wouldn't get in trouble. And we heard of a lot of shipments getting caught up in customs, some booths that never got their stuff, which is a tremendous financial hit. But this was the common thread amongst many of the publishers we talked to this year.
Oh, you're done.
Yeah, that was about it. I thought you'd jump in, actually. But yes, this was just something that we were hearing as sort of an undercurrent to a lot of the folks we talked to.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. I'm going to start talking some positive stuff.
Okay. The rest is positive. We're all good.
So we stayed in the Atlantic Hotel, which is a great Atlantic Congress Hotel, which is great for us because it's so close to the convention center. It's also, we almost feel guilty staying in this hotel because when you go down to the lobby, it feels like you're in some secret bigwig society.
Okay.
I mean, no kidding. I mean, every time we go in that lobby, there's all these famous designers and publishers all just standing around talking to each other. It's really kind of a cool thing, right? But anyhow, this place has always been notoriously, they have all these rooms there that play games in, but you're never sure where you're allowed to go. Well, this year, they cleared out the lobby and stuck some gaming tables up in there.
Yeah, 8 open gaming tables with signs that said, "This is for open gaming. Please help yourself." Yeah.
I think there was actually 12. There was a lot, but
yeah,
it was nice. And they were never that, we could almost always find a table or at least watch someone else play a game or maybe join in on it. Mm-hmm. I really liked this. It just made the hotel, it made it easier for us to game. This is a small thing, but it was just kind of a cool thing to see us being able to play there.
Yeah. I mean, in the past, they've had conference rooms available, but they often seemed like they were reserved for private events, and so you were never really sure you could go in there. It was nice of them to acknowledge that people were looking for gaming space and offering it. It was a nice perk.
Well, there you go. The Gaming in the Atlantic Congress.
Number 9.
Number 9 is an element related to the new re-release of When I Dream, which is a game that was out at last year's Essen, but now there was an Asmodee reprint. And there was a group that they had hired to dress up in night shirts, basically, like they were going to sleep. And at the press event that was on Wednesday of Essen, they were simply posing at a booth to promote this game that's about sort of dreamy word guessing. And they had people dressed as imps and fairies, and then somebody who was dressed like they were going to bed, and they were posing. But at the fair itself, they were doing sort of a live-action version of the game, dressed in these night shirts and in these costumes, and gathered around the player who was in a giant bed and playing this game in sort of a fantastical setting. And it was weird and a little bit awesome at the same time. The When I Dream cosplay crew is my number 9.
That was interesting.
It was neat.
I just kept running into them around the convention, and it was funny. I was like, I don't know. I love stuff like that, especially when it's done in a good way. I could hate the game, and if it's done well, I don't care. I'm still not sure why the one guy was running around blowing a horn.
I don't think that was related to When I Dream. That was just a crazy guy with a horn.
Yeah, but he must have something to do with a game.
I'm not totally sure if that wasn't just something that he does.
You know, there's one thing we didn't put on the list here, but I found it amusing. The same group, Repos, they brought scooters. And they were flying around the convention center before it opened. And I was jealous.
Yeah, I thought that was just a really creative way to get around the space. I mean, that's a large footprint, and it was just easier to move around like that.
We're bringing Segways next year. All right, my number 9 is higher on Eric's list. Go figure. So we'll get to it in like a second.
Number 8.
And we're here. My number 8 is the utter spectacle produced by Asmodee. Asmodee had about, I'd say, almost half of Hall 1 that was just them, ka-chunk. And they've always been pretty big with their productions. They've like large 2-story tall banners and big signage, and at like 1 or 2 different, 2 different retail locations, stores, because they had a good chunk of Hall 3 as well. I think maybe a third of Hall 3. That sounds right. Like giant footprints that they had. But in Hall 1, something that we had not seen before was an LED video ring that was suspended from the ceiling. This is something like you'd see in a stadium. And it was this video ring that was just showing images of their various games, of course, highlighting Pandemic Legacy 2, but also many of the other games in their catalog with animated logos and flashy graphics and just really impressive stuff. And then also in Hall 1, they had a Twitch stage, a presentation stage in which they were live streaming stuff with studio lights and these lounge chairs and looked like a talk show set, and playing group Pandemic, like a large multiplayer Pandemic version. And just really the presentation and the spectacle was turned up several notches this year. It was neat to see.
Yeah, I agree. It was really neat. That it was just the amount of technology there. It just felt like I was at PAX or E3 or something like that.
Yeah, they're learning from the video game industry for sure. But anyway, that's my number 8. Tom's number 9, the spectacle that is Asmodee.
Yeah, but I think this is good for the hobby to see all this huge stuff everywhere. Really, really neat.
Yeah.
So I'm very much looking forward to seeing where this goes in the future. Okay, the next thing for me was the Ravensburger event. So I got invited to a lot of meetings. And so when Ravensburger invited me over, I was like, oh, another meeting. But it wasn't a meeting. It was a special event that Ravensburger threw on. And they invited the press to come in, and they had Reiner Knizia get up, and he talked about the quests for El Dorado and the expansions that are coming out for that, that there are expansions coming out. It was interesting because They had all their designers there, their big name designers, and they gave them each a little cake that had a box of their game on top made out of cake. With the, that fondue ice cream, icing. I forget what it's called.
Fondant?
Fondant.
It's not fondue. It's different.
Yeah, you're right. Fondue would be... I would eat a fondue cake. But anyway, fondant icing, but they look like real little game boxes. That was kind of neat. I wanted
That's
to eat
cool.
them, but apparently everyone was just walking around with them. And they also announced a new game from the brands, Inca and Marca's brand. It's a legacy game, so that one I'm pretty pumped about. It was really funny, though, because I got there, and everyone's talking. I'm like, I don't know anybody here. Okay, fine. And fortunately, I found Tom Felber, who is the chairman of the Spiel des Jahres committee.
Oh.
So I talked to him, and then some Ravensburger people came up, and they're like, now listen, this whole event's going to be in German. And I was like, oh, maybe I should head out. And they're like, no, we'll have a translator. Go in the room, and there's a table with an English flag on it. Sorry, we didn't have an American flag. I was like, that's fine. I'm pretty sure England invented the language. They could use their flag.
Yes.
And stand at that table, and someone will translate. So that table was in the very middle. So we went and stood there. And Dale Yu from Opinionated Gamers was there, and then Eric Martin showed up. And this lady came and translated. But they also made sure at the very beginning that they announced that this was going on. They're like, we're glad. And they said, just so you know, the rest of this presentation is going to be in German. But for you Americans, we hope you enjoy it anyway. So then they talked, and she did a really good job because they would talk for a long time, and she would give a bullet point, and I was like, good. That's all I cared about anyway. You know? And it was, they talked. But then they did a Skype call with the Lawson brothers, Jack and Andrew Lawson. These are the guys who designed Make and Break, which has sold tons and tons of copies. There's all kinds of it. And these guys were in Australia. So this interview suddenly switched. The whole thing changed to English briefly, which was fine. So, but very Australian. And the guys were making jokes that I'm not sure everybody got, but the guy came on, he's like, if you wonder why I'm wearing this hat, it's because I'm Australian. We just killed a crocodile. It's cooking in a pot in the stove right now. We'll get back to that later. And these guys were just hilarious, going back and forth, talking about new make and break games ideas they had coming out. So the whole event was just a lot of fun. Afterwards, you had a chance to play games with the designers. Unfortunately, I had to run to the next meeting, so I didn't get to stick around and play games, but I found the whole thing fun. A lot of big name designers were there. Hopefully I could do something like this next year, and I'll make more time so I can stick around.
Cool.
Number 7.
My number 7 is a moment when I managed to get the timing right. There's so much going on at Essen, and there is as stock of various games goes down, it's easy to miss out on something. Stuff sells out. It's very common. Or you know that they were going to have copies available and you just didn't make it to the right place at the right time. But I had been waiting for Tokyo Highway. I managed to come by the booth. This is a game that is not widely available, but they knew they were going to have a few copies at Essen. And they had a sign that said, Tokyo Highway will be here tomorrow, and you come back tomorrow. And they had the sign that said, the shipment was delayed. We don't have it yet. It will be here around noon. And I had to be back at the booth at noon. So I was like, I'm never going to make it. That's fine. And I had maybe 15 minutes before I had to be back at the booth. Let's go check out this booth. Maybe they'll have the copies. And the copies had arrived, and they had a pile of maybe 7 of them still on the table. And I managed to swoop in, grab one, and get out and back to the booth on time. And I know somebody else probably wanted that copy too, but it's nice to win one when you know that they were that limited and to have gotten something that's harder to get. So that was one of my happy memories is grabbing Tokyo Highway at the last minute. It was my number 7.
I'm glad you had that happen.
Yay!
You got to schedule better time for yourself.
How would I have known that? Everything aligned.
My number 7 is just I'm so happy to see escape room stuff so big.
Oh, yeah.
There was an escape room booth in I think it was Ludicali or Ludinaut. No, there's too many Luda.
Luda Creations.
Luda Creations.
Yeah.
You're right. They had like a a 10-minute escape room, which I never did get around to going over to see.
No, I never made it there either.
And you had to beat it in 10 minutes and steal a game, I think, was the whole point.
It was for Steal This Game, which was inspired by their booth getting robbed last year. And they invented a game called Steal This Game, which they had available. If you donated to them, you could get a copy of this. But they also had an escape room version of it.
And there were other escape rooms, and there were 3 new escape games and 3 new unlock games and other escape room games. There's a virtual reality one that people were taking a look at, and I'm loving this. Bring on more of it, says I. This is fantastic. When I bring home a game and my wife says, ooh, I can't wait to play that, I'm pleased.
Yes. They even had the company that ran the first escape room that my wife and I ever did in Cologne was there as well, with like a mini cube escape room that they were running that I also didn't get a chance to do. It was packed every time I walked by. But it was neat to see that, like real escape rooms, as part of the experience, as well as more of these home versions are becoming available.
Number 6.
My number 6 is one of the interesting aspects of an international fair like this, because you have people from all over the world selling versions of games that are intended to be sold all over the world that can sort of mingle together and sort of break some of the barriers of the licensing agreements that they've been given. The example I'm talking about here is that there were 4 different versions of Reiner Knizia's Modern Art on the floor at Essen. There is a Simon edition that is for, I'm not sure what they have, but North America is one of the places for it. Their Oink Games had a German-only Modern Art, but you could still buy it. They don't ask you where you're from when you buy it. There was also an edition from, let's see, I wrote it down. There was a Korean version from a group called Dice Tree Games that has a gavel. And then there was a Chinese version from a place called Gigi or Gigi Company. Same game, same Reiner Knizia game, just totally different art design, packaging, everything. And it's just one of the weird quirks of being at Essen, that you can get different versions of a game that you may know from home that is a totally different version. It's kind of
which one do you like the best?
Oh, boy. I think the most blinged out one was the Korean one, the Dice Tree Games, that had an easel and a wooden gavel in it. They also had a version of Knizia's Winner's Circle, which is a game that's been out of print here for some time, that looked lovely with pre-painted horses and pretty neat. So thumbs up to them.
First of all, the Korean one was the correct choice. It comes with a gavel. Woo! Done. The worst was probably the Oink one, because if there's a game I don't want to see done with that kind of minimalistic thing, it's Modern Art. But it's amazing to me. Reiner Knizia definitely has the rights back, and he's definitely selling them by country.
Yes. Yes.
I did manage to get a couple of these. I definitely got the Korean one and the Oink one. I didn't actually hunt that one down, but Jason grabbed it. But the Korean one, I was like, this is pretty nice. Really liked how it looked. All right, my number 6 is just the international level, or the groups at the convention itself. So there was an Indonesian conglomerate there for the first time. That was really neat. I met some folks from Macedonia, and there's Japan is not just Japan brand anymore. Oink Games is their own thing. There's several groups from Japan. There's several groups from China. There's a Taiwan group. There's a Thailand group. There's several Korean groups, not just Korean board games, but there's other Korean companies. It's great. I love seeing this. Cultures from all over the world there. I guess the one continent that's not really represented much yet is Africa. But I think it's just a matter of time. We're going to see this happen more and more.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about it.
It really lends to the celebration aspect of Essen. I mean, I love the Spiel event because it has such a celebratory feel, a nice coming together of all of the just different cultures and languages and aesthetics, and it's a party. It really is, and it's neat to see everybody's different perspectives and ways of producing games, and everyone learns from each other. It's a real sharing feel and selling feel. It's pretty cool.
Huzzah.
Number 5.
My number 5 is getting stopped in unexpected places. Of course, we were at the booth. We all took shifts at the booth, and we knew that we'd have people coming to say hi, and folks that, of course, recognized us and watched and listened to the content we produce. But when we'd venture out, we'd often run into people who knew us as well. I was on my way trying to run to get those exit games. And so I was in a hurry trying to weave through traffic, and somebody, as they passed me, Eric, hi! And I was like, hi, I don't want to block traffic. Nice to see you, and kept moving. Or I got stopped on my way out of the bathroom. Somebody was like, yeah, I saw you in there. Didn't want to interrupt. But big fan. Another time we got crammed onto a subway. There are 2 subway stops leading out of the Messe, and they're pretty crowded by the end of the day. And if you get on at the first station, you filled up the train car, and then it pulls up to the second station, and people still trying to get on. We were those people still trying to get on into the second station. So we squeeze our way onto this train because we were trying to make a dinner reservation. Squeezed our way on. Couldn't even reach the handles to hang on. So as the train jostles around, we're falling on people. And Sam, collides with someone. And it's very apologetic. I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. And the guy's like, no biggie. Hey, could I get a selfie with you? Just in this crowded train car. So that was another unexpected, fascinating aspect of visiting this town and having so many gamers all squeezed into small spaces. Sometimes literally.
My number 5 is our show. We did the live show there. We do lots of live shows.
Yes.
Essen is one of the few that I go into, and I'm not stressed out about stuff because of 2 reasons. One, we don't put a whole lot of prep into it. We know what we're doing. We're doing a game show. We're doing a few things, right? Mm-hmm. And 2, we know the audience is the best audience we have. I really think so.
They're very enthusiastic and willing to accept just about anything, I think.
Yeah, but there's I don't know, they get into it. When we do the game show and someone says an answer which might be wrong or might give the other team points, you can hear everyone just gasp. It cracks me up every time.
The air gets sucked out of the room. It's great.
And it's so much fun. And also, I don't know, at our Gen Con show, we sell the tickets to that one for $4, and people still don't show up. At this one, everyone practically who gets a free ticket comes.
Yeah.
And the room fills up. It looks very organized. It's a nice room. I don't know what it is. It's just one of my favorite shows to do.
Yeah, I think because the time period between getting the ticket and coming to the show is so short, we don't give them out until the morning of the show. So people are getting the ticket at 10 a.m. and then seeing the show at 4. So there's less time for them to change their minds and to come to their senses.
I would love to do that at Gen Con, but they wouldn't give us the room unless we sold the tickets.
Exactly.
All right. Anyway, it was a super fun, great show. Now, my number 5.
Number 4.
My number 4 is a really interesting experiment that a trio of game publishers did. Let's see, it's Sunny Games from the Netherlands, Biovia from France, and Peaceable Kingdom from the U.S. put together their resources to create something called Co-op Square. This was very close to our booth in Hall 7. And so these 3 companies that produce cooperative games decided to pool their resources to cooperate in order to sell games at Essen. So they all shared in the profits selling their own games, plus they had a separate storefront with 99 different cooperative games, not just from those 3 companies, but they had Pandemic, they had Ghost Stories. In fact, they published a little newspaper flyer thing that they handed out that has a flow chart to tell you what cooperative game you might like. Questions like, have you played cooperative games before? Which mechanisms do you like? How is your memory? Do you like magic? Do you like animals? What setting do you like? And leading you to different cooperative games, many of which were not published by them. And this concept of cooperative companies cooperating to sell cooperative games is really kind of cool. And I bought one from them. Co-op Square was my number 4.
I saw that, but I never really stopped by there.
I just think it's a cool story.
All right, I got 2 games to talk about. My number 4 is Dragon Castle. Dragon Castle was a surprise for me. I know Z had mentioned it. It had Mahjong tiles. I was like, okay, we'll see. And then they told me the designer was the same guy who did Photosynthesis. I'm more on board now. I played it. It is great. It reminds me of Santorini. There's a pile of tiles. You're pulling these tiles, putting them on your board, trying to make them pop and flip over, adding more tiles and getting some special abilities. But the best thing is there's 2 rules. You can play with 1 animal, which gives you a special thing to break the rules. And 2, there's a dragon, which is a special way to score. It's beautiful. It's great. I love it. Dragon Castle.
Yep, I mentioned this in the live show as well. I really enjoyed this one. I think it would work well as a good family game. It has some cool timing, some subtle timing to play with, which is going to provide that depth. Even though it's a simple concept, there's stuff to explore here as well. Thumbs up.
Number 3.
My number 3 was a fan that showed up at our live show. We talked about how great the audience is, but this is one member of that audience that handmade the Gaming Machine t-shirt with a picture of Jason Levine on it and sat in the front row, and he just had this huge grin on his face as soon as he saw this thing. And it was amazing. I know this has happened to you at least once, Tom. You've had your face put on a t-shirt, but I've never had this happen. And it was just so fascinating to see the reaction to someone seeing a t-shirt with their own face on it. The Gaming Machine t-shirt was my number 3.
I feel like Eric just asked for a t-shirt of him to be made.
I didn't. I don't know what you'd even do. It would have to be a talking t-shirt. You'd have a chip.
I think the only t-shirt I've been on was that one they sold at Dice Tower Con 1. It says I beat Tom Vassell and all I got was his t-shirt.
I have one of those.
Well, you've never beat me, though.
No, I think I did, actually.
You've beat me many times. I'm just kidding.
And they handed me that t-shirt. Yes. I did when I walked into the hall where we were having our show. Somebody was listening to one of our episodes in the hall, waiting to watch us record one of our episodes. And I just sort of looked at him. I was like, that's weird.
My number 3. My number 3 is another game, Indian Summer. I've already talked a bit about this earlier in the show, right?
Yeah. That was just a few minutes ago.
But that's fine. I really do like this game. It's a lot of fun. I love these tile-laying games. Super great time. Indian Summer.
Number 2.
My number 2, we actually mentioned on Dice Tower tonight, just a little bit ago. Tom summoned everyone to the booth, said there's an emergency, we need to all meet, get here as soon as possible. And while I was expecting some sort of crisis, some sort of panic, it was actually everybody gathering around to wish me a happy birthday. I turned 40 in Essen the day before the fair opened, and Uli and Elena, 2 of our volunteers at the booth, made me a burned das Brot cake. It was amazing and unexpected and delightful. And plus, the actual Burned das Brot, the TV show, was a different production than it's been the last 3 years, so that was a bonus. But that had nothing to do with the fair itself. That's my number 2, surprise birthday cake.
Well, it was Eric's 40th birthday, and I thought, oh man, he's not even home for his 40th birthday. So I emailed that Uli and said, can we buy a cake somewhere and have it there? He's like, yeah, I'll see if I can find this Burn to Brunt or whatever the stupid thing is. And I said, sure, but he couldn't find it. So they made it. And
Yeah.
They said it took them hours to make it.
It was great.
It was also delicious. So, hooray. My number 2 is our staff. So this is a good segue here because Uli and oh wow, I could just name after name of all the people who helped at our booth did a fantastic job. It was on point. There was always people at the booth, people helping. Kenny was an amazing person putting all the games together since we shipped 300 plus of them back home. And I really appreciate hanging out with the folks from the Dice Tower. We don't get to do that very often, but we got to do it a little bit more at Essen, and it was great. It was also good to have Mandy and Suzanne there.
Oh, yeah. What's really cool is a lot of people coming to the booth specifically to see Mandy and Suzanne. Like, they're like, oh, yeah, we know you, Eric. just when are Mandy and Suzanne going to be here? And
To be
so
fair, that
excited.
happens to you a lot, regardless of who's at the booth.
Yeah. So yes.
Sorry,
Anyway,
I ruined the moment.
it was great to see people so excited to meet them, and for them, they're having their first year in Essen, and to be so warmly welcomed was very cool. And all of the volunteers, we have like a multi-pronged goal when we're there. Not only are we meeting people and we're selling promos in the booth, but you're also busy meeting with publishers and getting review copies to have content to talk about for the next 6 months to a year. So there's a lot to deal with, and we need a good number of people to keep all of that going. And it was really seamless. It was not stressful at all. We got what we needed to get done, and it was done efficiently and well and with a smile. And it was really great to hang out with all of these people and to get to meet so many fans in the booth.
It was also fun for me because Mandy, Suzanne, and Kenny, it was their first time there. And you get to see things through new eyes, right? And watch them just be like, wow, all these games.
Yes. I'm very interested to hear Mandy and Suzanne's episode next week, because I'm sure they're going to talk about their buying habits, because they had trouble getting some of that stuff home.
I warned them. I warned them both.
We tried.
And finally, number 1.
Okay, so our number 1 is the same thing. So I'm co-opting Eric.
Jump in.
Before he can, take it over. Whenever we go to a convention, we always have people say, hey, can you come to this meetup? Can you come to our board game store? And it's always like, man, I'd love to, but I hate to leave the convention. Mm-hmm. We don't really have that problem at Essen because the convention shuts down.
Yes, 7 o'clock, the convention hall. In fact, they kick you out. And there's no... Well, there is an exception, but usually there's nowhere to play in the hall after things shut down. Although there were a couple of publishers that had paid events that you could stick around in their booth and play into the wee hours of the morning.
Right. So when I heard about Dice and Mystics last year, we promoted it and talked about it. But we didn't go because I was like, oh, I need to do something else on Saturday night or whatever. And then our Saturday night was kind of like, well, whatever. And I was like, well, why don't we go to this thing? And I was still kind of wavering. And then they said, and we're going to have food delivered there. So you can order food and eat there. I was like, oh, well, that sounds fantastic.
Well, that's dinner taken care of.
So we said, well, we could come. And we came, and it was a blast. First of all, the couple who runs it are secretly Santa and Mrs. Claus.
That's our guess anyway, yeah.
Because that is how nice they are. I don't know that they had any fun at all there other than running it. They came, they ran it, they did a great job. We got there. There was drinks like tea and coffee and other drinks that were there that you could get. They ordered food from some place, and they were like, oh, we're sorry. And the food took a long time to get there, and they kept apologizing to us, and I wasn't upset because I was playing games. Mm-hmm. Everyone there, it was a really chill environment. It was just cool and fun, and everyone had a great time. It was easily my favorite thing we did there.
It was.
I'm surprised it was your number 1 too.
Oh yeah, I mean it was very relaxing. It was. This was at a church that was a good 15-20 minutes away from the Messe. But they had taken their meeting hall area and crammed as many tables as they could. I forget what the total was. It was maybe 130 people. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it was something like that.
And just crammed in as many people as they could. They put up signs in English. They communicated in English for most of the event, and really made us feel welcome as an international
That's one of the
group.
funniest raffles I've ever seen.
And yes, there was a raffle with some somewhat silly prizes. At times there were some $5 gift certificates to German retailers. There were some toys that they got from the toy store, fidget spinners even, and raffling these off to game players and having wonderful banter while doing it. It was a wonderful, calm, relaxing event in which we got to play more games than we were able to do in the hustle and bustle of the fair itself. So I'm hoping we're able to make that work in years to come. But I think they might need a bigger room.
Well, they said that the people who owned the parish were very happy and said that we left it cleaner than anyone else ever has, for which, again,
good.
I'm going to give them all the credit.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It was fantastic. Definitely adding that to our schedule for next year. Folks, I'm sure you're tired of hearing about Essen. So am I. We're going to talk
Probably.
about board games now. So there's a lot of great board games to play. We have so many from this convention.
Yes, we're well
Are you
stocked.
ready for them? We'll find out. Hey, if you're at PAX Unplugged, come by. On our forums at Board Game Geek, we'll post a schedule of who's going to be at the booth and when in about a week, or actually probably this week of when you're hearing the show, so you'll be able to see when to come by. We hope that we have a great time there. But for now, until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode number 529 was recorded on November 1st, 2017. Coming up next week, Mandy and Suzanne might have a thing or two to discuss about their first Essen experience. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with production assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, and Rob Siri. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. Frank Sinatra's Japanese Holiday brought to you by Tokyo My Way. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, email us at Dicetower@gmail.com, or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including Board Gamers Anonymous, Board Game Corner, the Push Your Luck Podcast, Rolling Dice and Taking Names, the Geek All-Stars, the Dukes of Dice, Our Turn, and Board Game Breakfast at DicetowerNetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. All right, Tom, I made it through the whole Essen recap show without talking about that spiral potato stand once. Oh.
And I made it without talking about all the restaurants we went to.
You mean like the Greek place and the
we almost did.
Mongolian barbecue place? And
yeah, that was my number 4, and then I moved it because I was like, Eric's going to get on my case because I talked about food.
Well, way to dodge that one.
Good. We didn't talk about food at all. I feel proud of ourselves.